welcome to today's session on building your skills and career as a mid-career professional. My name is Jody Hammer, and I'm very happy to be here with you today to talk about this most important topic and and answer hopefully many of the questions that you might have. We very much want this to be a conversation. So while I have definitely some slides and such to emphasize talking points, I want you, the listener, those of you who are listening live to this, that is, to absolutely put your questions in the chat box, and we will get to as many of them as we can. My colleague Danielle is joining us on the back end, helping from behind the scenes. Thank you so much, Danielle, for being here and helping us keep track of the chat box questions as they come in. So again, thank you in advance for any of and all of the questions that you have. So I am the Career Services Specialist for NPCA's Global Reentry Program. So I have the distinct privilege to work with you, the RPCV job seeker and career changer and midlife professional. Our services are not limited only to the evacuees, for example. We came into being at that time, and we've definitely expanded our reach, and we are doing a lot of programming for folks who've been back longer as well. So we hope that you'll get a lot out of this, and we're always looking for ideas on additional topics to promote, to feature. So let us know if you have any suggestions. You can always email careers@peacecorpsconnect.org, and in the subject line, put webinar topic. And I'd be happy to try to accommodate that for you, okay? So today we are going to talk, as I said, about, building your skills, moving up, moving on as a mid-career professional. So first I want to actually start with a question. What do you think is a mid-career professional, right? How much experience qualifies you as a mid-career professional? How many, years under your belt, if you will, age-wise, is there such a thing, right? So I'm just curious, and it really doesn't matter where you are in your own personal, uh, you know, development and such. You are absolutely welcome to be here, and even if we come up with maybe an answer and maybe you're just starting your career, that's fine. This will be helpful information for you as you move on. So absolutely consider that. I'm going to look here in the chat box and see what we have. Okay, so we have everything from 5 to 10, 7 to 10, 8 plus, 10 to 12. Absolutely. Yeah. So that just shows you there's a lot of it's kind of a vague area, right? There's no one set amount of time that qualifies you as a mid-career professional. So that's the first thing that I want to say, right? When you think about the average career, the lifespan of a career, right, is generally what, at least probably about 40 years when you think about it. So if you put it in that perspective, the halfway point would be 20, right? But you mid-career professional, generally I hear people refer to it more as like maybe 10 to 15 years of experience, right? Or 10 to 20 years of experience, right? You're still maybe in that mid-career professional area, but oftentimes people move up and on to maybe more senior level positions once they've had maybe, that 10, 15, plus years of experience. And that very much depends on you. It depends on the organization and industry that you're working in. Some areas, there's advancement opportunities much sooner, right? And other areas, I always say it's also up to you in terms of what like, if you find your passion, and I'm just going to use myself as an example. My passion is really doing job search coaching, right? And working with applicants, specifically the returned Peace Corps volunteer population that I myself so relate to as an RPCV myself. I love the population because you are resourceful and you take the ball and run with it. And just RPCVs are great people, right? And so I love the fact that I've been able to spend so much of my career working with RPCVs. Before I came on board here with NPCA, I was the I worked as the career development specialist in Peace Corps headquarters, running their career center when they had one. And I loved that job, right? I would have stayed forever, but they have term limits there. So imagine my complete, surprise and just I was so pleased to get a call from NPCA when they were talking and deciding to really roll out the global reentry program. And I am so happy here. I love it. It allows me to get back to working with you all, which again is my passion. What I mean by this story is for people like me who maybe have found their passion in what it is, I don't want to advance personally right now. I am at the level that I want to be. And for me, the level that I want to be at is much more of the client work, the one, the one-on-one or the, group facilitating, right? Training and development. I personally don't want to move up into the director role of, a career center because it wouldn't allow me to maintain that connection that is so important for me to feel that I'm making a difference. And it's just not my interest is not as much in strategic planning. And it's great. Those are great things. But I want to be more of that hands-on person. So it also depends, I guess what I'm saying, on you in terms of when you might be at, if at a level that you might be going into what might be considered a senior level position or not. Don't feel guilty if you don't want that. It's okay. So come talk to me. All right. So let's continue moving on here. Just defining mid-career professionals. Really, it's less age dictated than experience. Some people get into a career and they like just they skyrocket really fast, right? And they become maybe a senior level person much faster than most people. So they might be very young and be a mid-career professional, and at a senior level, that type of thing. But the typical, if you're thinking, okay, what's your, what's a typical age? It would probably be, more like the 30 somethings, assuming maybe you did more of the traditional, going to your undergrad or whatnot, your school, after high school, and then, getting in the job market, pretty much after that. That would take you to probably the 30 something to 40, whatever range. So again, please continue listening. If you don't fall into that range, it does not matter whatsoever. And a lot of what we're going to cover is going to be applicable regardless. Okay. So I wanted to show this as kind of an overview, right? Of because I'm focusing on really personal and professional development, and we're going to talk about really what is that? How are those the same and different for the mid-career professionals? So looking at this kind of this graphic, there's some really good graphics for career planning, and so I like to pull some of those and use them. Of course, giving credit, as possible. And there's, for example, in this one you have, this shows more of that lifelong approach, right, to your continued development, because career development is not something that you just do when you're looking to get a raise or a promotion, right? Career development should be something that you're doing from the get-go, we recommend, and through the course of your life to really be able to gain additional skills that are helpful for you if and when you want to move up or around, all those things. So part of that is really, the self-awareness, right? Like looking at who you are and the kind of person you are, right? The kind of, personality, what your aspirations are, what are you looking for, what kind of a career is what you're looking for. And guess what? That may very well change, and that's okay. And that might be why several of you are on this call, because you see yourself as a mid-career professional. Maybe you've had several years doing whatever you're doing and you are considered maybe an expert in it, or you've got it, and maybe you're bored. Maybe you're just not feeling, or you really don't like it and you're desperate to get something that really feels more rewarding for yourself. That's all really important, being aware of yourself and your needs. It is important, I believe, that you are doing something that is fulfilling. Yes, there are times in your life where you may have to take a job where it's not your best choice, right? In terms of your own personal fulfillment, but you have a family to feed or a mortgage to pay, and it's the pandemic, or who knows, where you might not have as much of that choice. But then I encourage people to really look at the kinds of opportunities and the opportunities that they are taking for those obvious, very important reasons, and look at how you can pull transferable skills from that. What transferable skills are you developing in whatever you're doing that can then help make you more competitive for what's coming? So always looking, there's always that plus side, right, of everything. Even COVID has some, advantages, if you will. And I I am not the one to put out there that I'm happy that COVID is here, but some of the the advantages maybe that you're spending more time with, your immediate family, right? Your children, your whatever, which can be hard as well. Ask me. I have a 7-year-old. But it's also that quality time and some of those things that, things have slowed down in some ways, which can be healthy for you. So looking at any situation as what you can, see as the positive, right? And go from there. Looking at development needs, right? So what have you already developed? And then what skills do you need, to develop? And then goal setting. We're going to talk a lot about how to achieve your professional development goals and goal setting for, mid-career professionals and really professionals in general, right? That's a really important part of this, what we're going to talk about. And then looking at your career, excuse me, looking at your career and building the career that's right for you, right? Knowing that most people change not jobs, but careers multiple times in their lives. I think the latest stat, and this was actually several years ago that I'd heard, and you'll hear different ones depending on how they what they're pulling from. But I've heard like 7 careers, not 7 jobs, but 7 distinct careers. That's a lot of change, right? So don't feel like some people get really bogged down by, well, I don't know what I want to do for my career, and they feel very like I have to choose it wisely because this is the rest of my working life. And that's just not true. At any moment, you may decide it's not for you or you want to do something else. And that's great. That's the part that I love about today's day and age compared to our parents, my parents, or certainly my grandparents, where they worked one job their entire life. That's just not the reality these days, which I personally like. Gives you more flexibility. So, looking at building your competence, right? So, how are you developing, your skills? It is important. There's certain skills that are essential to really work on developing if you want to move up. And as like for mid career professionals and if who want to maybe move up. So we're going to talk about that more. But are you working actively to develop those? Are you finding what you need, identifying what you need to improve in and going from there? So I just like that graphic because it's kind of I guess it's kind of the 15,000 feet view, right? The big view. So as I said, personal development, right? You'll hear people talk about personal development and professional development somewhat interchangeably, right? Certainly personal development, things that you work on for yourself impact your career, communication skills or team building or whatever, those kinds of things that you're looking to get better. They can be very related to your career. But you also have personal development goals like I want to get a doctorate in or a master's, or it could be educational, right? I want to become a certified whatever or a pilot, where these have nothing to do necessarily with maybe your career. Maybe that's something totally different, but you want to be a pilot like the executive director, right? The president of NPCA, Glenn Bloomhorst. He is a licensed pilot, and that is his like stress reliever too. He loves to fly and it just brings him this joy. And so that's a great example of a personal development goal you might have. At this point, I'd love to encourage you to, if you're willing to share, what is one of your personal development goals that you've set for yourself or you just know you want and you want to think about how you can set goals around that. So drop that in the chat box if you can. And great, Danielle, I'll ask you if there are any that are coming in. I don't see any yet, but as there are, to let me know. Okay, so that's personal development, and then you have your professional development goals, more of those traditional. Okay, what are what do I want? How do I want to improve? Right? How can I get there? Right? Checking in with when you have your annual performance review or whatever it is, to take that to heart, maybe even ask, there's nothing wrong with, in fact, it's very welcome for you to ask, hey, if there's one thing that I could improve on in the next 6 months that would help my job, whatever, what would that be? And get their opinion, and I think managers are usually really open to that. And please try not to be defensive. Whatever they say, please don't go in and try to justify, well, I actually do this. I know how to do this. That's not what you want to do. You want to take, even if you don't agree with it, you can certainly say, thank you so much for that input. I really appreciate that. And I'll spend some time maybe processing that more. after this meeting or whatever. But be that gracious, open to feedback is really a trait that leaders have. Good leaders have, and that's what you want to develop if you're looking to move up and develop and lead. Okay, Stephanie's shared, get a leadership position in a nonprofit. Okay, great. I just went up here. Live outside the US. Great personal goal. Great. And then Stephanie's get a leadership position in a nonprofit, program director, assistant director, eventually executive director. Great. Now, that one, that's a great personal, goal and professional goal, right? That's very much tied to your profession, right? What you want to do, how you want to give back, how you want to be and show up in your professional life, which is great. Thank you for sharing that. Any others? Project management certification, the PMP, great program, absolutely good. Or a doctorate, nice. So Guillermo, thank you for sharing that too. There's lots of good stuff coming in here. Self-improvement and wellness. Yep. Erica, thank you. Communication skills, physical health, emotional health, right? Absolutely. And, so often these personal goals are the ones that get cast to the side as we get into the new year. I think if you're anything like the typical person, myself included, right? You start the new year with goals. You have your New Year's resolutions. I'm going to get in shape, right? You have this kind of global, or I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to, whatever it is for you. And you start and you're really gung ho on it and you're making good progress. And pretty soon it's just like it gets left because there's not the appropriate planning for it. You really need to plan it and continue and follow up and all of that. And there's ways to do that, which we'll be talking about. Okay. Leslie, thank you for sharing a professional or personal goal for you. Transition from clinical practice to a policy job for healthcare. Great, great, good choice. You know what you want, and now it's more, how do you get there? And how do you plan for and that we're going to talk about that as well in this session. So thank you for sharing that. Build technical skills, absolutely, Morgan. That's great. Become an advisor or at a director level in your area, absolutely. These are all great. Gosh, you guys have good goals and lots of them. That's awesome. Okay, so let's keep going on and let's go on to see kind of how can we bring these to fruition and what are some of the tips to share. So this is career advancement, really requires developing certain skills, right? And I love this graphic from the Balance Career, which is another of my favorite sources for good, quality advice for the job seeker, the mid-career professional, all of that. They have really good advice and also excellent graphics. It's probably one of the best graphic sources I've ever found. They, like this image here, I don't know that person, but I see her name on many graphics and they're amazing. And they're so good. They really help kind of make things pop and people to digest it. So I took that one here. Some of the professional skills, right? I mean, public speaking, right? And that's actually the number one fear of professionals in terms of like what they're afraid to do is public speaking. And one of the ways to improve that one is oftentimes through Toastmasters. And if you're not familiar with Toastmasters, look it up. I imagine they're doing virtual right now, which is different than the in-person, but Toastmasters can help you really kind of practice and get your, public speaking up to par so that you're not, as, nervous or, as concerned about it or as reluctant to do it, because it is important to be able to, represent an organization or a department and, share things and all of that. Flexibility, you all already have that one. That's not a newbie for you all. Successful RPCVs, have proven in their Peace Corps service and or being ripped out of Peace Corps service, right, in the evacuation, your flexibility, your resourcefulness, your all of that, right? So you're great at that. Teamwork as well. Most RPCVs, you're working with teams, and so you're pretty good at those. But that's another one that's important. So all of these ones that are here, are ones that you can develop, that you can work on, whether it's at home, on your own, and or within your career. So really, I would say these are the ones that are in this graphic are applicable at every certainly at every stage of your career, but definitely as you're looking to like move up into from the mid career, maybe moving toward that more senior level positions, those are the skills that become really essential in leading, and in, in steering, a program or a department or an agency, right? So very important. And then, always be on the lookout, looking always to expand your skill set. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on as well. I just want to say here, looking at both, trainings that are available through your current job, maybe, right? Because most employers do have, or many employers, I should say, have a professional development budget allotted for their workers. Federal government, very much so. This is definitely something that's big in the federal government. You can tap into a lot of different trainings and such. But even outside, the nonprofit, the National Peace Corps Association, they have a professional development fund set up for each employee to allow them to, maybe it helps them, at least it either pays for or helps, reduce the cost of certain trainings that employee feels would help them in their job, ideally, right? But something that would help them. So many people, I'm speaking from the government perspective and federal government, there were so many people who just never used theirs. They just never got around to it or never got organized enough to like follow through on it. They'd be like, oh, I should do that, but they'd never take. You have to take the ball and run with it. You have to do the research and find what you want to do, and you need to present it to whatever department or your supervisor and ask for their, sign off, or whatever, to do these. Do it. This is something that they're paying for or they're contributing to, right? That's great. Just, whatever it is, whether it's a technical skill, maybe you're not as comfortable in Excel as you would like to be. There's lots of, online ones now, and, vice versa, but online programs where you can take and you can go through and improve those skills, so that when you're applying for a job that wants you to know how to do, whether it's pivot tables, which is more advanced, admittedly, but, there's certain skills that maybe you need, you'll have them. So definitely taking advantage of that. And then volunteer roles, I put this here, and yes, I know we're talking about mid-career professional development, and yet I have on here as a bullet volunteer roles and internships. I mean, that's something that most people associate with new grads. Like, okay, you can augment your experience and beef it up by tapping into internships, by tapping into, volunteer roles. Well, the reality is, let's say you're a mid-career professional and you're looking to advance or maybe pivot altogether, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well, into a different career. And you've done your research and the kinds of skills you need. You could gain those skills if you don't have them from your current job. Maybe it's totally different. You're making a career pivot that has nothing to do with your current job. You might find that you can develop some of those skills by in volunteer roles. And I'm thinking of roles like the affinity groups and the affiliate groups of Peace Corps, right? So NorCal, the Northern California Peace Corps Association, right? Or, they have a board and they have many positions, the comms position, communications director, or whatever they call it, right? The membership, special events, whatever. They have lots of different roles to play. And you could certainly, run for one of those, ask to, they're oftentimes desperate to find people who are willing to commit. They'll help train you. They can oftentimes, get you the information from the past person that can help, whatever. So those are ways that you might, right, that you might find and hone that skill so that you can put that on your resume. And you absolutely can put volunteer work on your resume, and it absolutely counts for toward, in federal, it's seen as exactly the same. So if you have a year of, they'll do it by how many hours. I mean, if it was a year, if they're looking for a year full time and yours was 10 hours a week, right? That would be a quarter of the time. And then maybe you have some experience in another area that adds up to that too. But you can definitely tap, volunteer roles and even internships, externships, right? These, people just associate internships with, new grad, right? No experience, or a way to get experience. It's not just that. So it really is tap into those kinds of opportunities as well. Especially, I mean, if you are, unemployed, maybe you lost your job because of COVID, and that stinks, and I get that, and it's been a really tough, job market, maybe you can tap into doing some of those internships or, volunteer types of experiences to kind of keep you it keeps you fresh or gets, your skill set, right, kept fresh, but it also fills that gap where if you've been unemployed for the 9 months, it pushes that down a little bit, right? And it can help you, take the attention away from, although honestly, anyone who's been, who's lost a job in COVID, you don't really have to worry. Everyone understands the pandemic. It's not, there it's nothing to your fault, right? With those kinds of things. So just know that. And then really the key with developing these different goals and with goal setting is it is goal setting and effective goal setting, and we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to show you a graphic that I absolutely an infographic that I absolutely love, and I've put it onto like 4 slides, and this one comes, you know this one comes from, the Muse, and it is, that's another of my favorite sources for career advice and all of that. So anytime I tell people when I'm talking to them and they have a question about, how do I pivot to a new career as a mid-career professional or whatever, do a Google search on that and then put in the Muse or balanced careers, and chances are they've covered the topic at some point. They have really good resources. So just again to plug them. And no, I don't get paid for this. This is because I truly do believe it, and I tend to use a lot of their graphics. So want to give them some kudos there because they are just amazing. So how do you set professional development goals and reach them? And notice how I love how in this graphic and reach them is bigger. It's like anyone can set professional development goals, but how do you reach them? How do you follow through? That's the challenge. Okay. So start with your end goal in mind, right? So this requires you doing some reflection on where do I want to go from here, right? Okay, so I'm a mid-career professional. I've maybe been in this, whatever your situation is, I've been in this job. I'm feeling the need to make a change. I really want to work in XYZ instead, whatever it is. Maybe you know that, so you know what the goal is, right? What you need to find out a lot about that before you jump to a new profession. You want to research, and that involves many things. Doing research online to find out, okay, what are the organizations working in that, or what are the job titles in an organization like this? So what are the kinds of companies that you would consider? And what credentials do you need, right? To successfully pivot to that, right? Do you need a certification in something or maybe a master's or whatever? Maybe it's time to go back to grad school part-time or full-time, who knows, right? But maybe not. Maybe there's other things that you can, augment. Maybe you have so much experience that could replace sometimes people who have a lot of experience already and they've been out for 15, 20 years, whatever, and they're moving up, they don't necessarily depends on the job and such, right? But they may not have to drop everything and go back to school to be able to get to that next step. It might be possible to, use their extensive experience that they have and tap into that and really, promote your transferable skills as you're making a case for yourself and doing a really good job with that. So that could work. Okay. So then what they're saying here about working backwards, right? So it's the skills you need, the experience you need, right? Trading certifications, all of that. Like what are you going to need? You're going to find a lot of this also by talking to people in the field. And I think they reference that a little bit, maybe further down as well, but talking to and getting insight or intel, if you will, from people who are working in that industry, in that field, or maybe that company even, right? And how are you going to reach them? And this is a whole different, webinar. We don't have time to go into the details, but reaching out to them through LinkedIn is a very powerful tool to find people, and you can do like the advanced search where people search where you do prior employer and put Peace Corps, just Peace Corps, nothing else, and then or US Peace Corps, whatever, and then current employer and whatever it is, or current industry, and then your what comes up are people who have worked for Peace Corps in some capacity, could be staff or could be in the field. Many of them are RPCVs and people who, even those that are working at headquarters or have worked. So reaching out to them and getting your contacts to know where you can get that information you need to make the best plan to be able to, pivot or go on and move up. So Review, look at your most recent performance evaluation, right? And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier too. You can really ask in your performance review, for content or suggestions on how you can, further improve yourself, and if I can improve right here, one thing in the next quarter, what would help me most? Like getting that insight from them. And then setting smart goals, and these are one of my favorite acronyms, right? Smart goals. And what do we mean by smart goals, right? So specific, right? What the goal is, not just I want to eat healthy or I want to be healthier, like you want specific, measurable, right? So measurable, what's the how much, weight will you have lost, over the course of what period of time? What is the way that you'll get to that? I'm just doing these are more like personal ones, right? But your professional ones, might be okay. So you need experience in whatever skill, and you could substitute. What's the specific skill? How to make it measurable. I will take one, and there's some samples down here that you can read actually on the bottom. Complete a blank certification course before the end of the year, right? So it's specific, it's what you're doing, right? Measurable. I'll have it done by the end of the year. That's an accountability type of thing, right? Achievable. You don't want to have one that's completely unrealistic. I will master all aspects of whatever. Like you have to have it be something that's going to be achievable as well. And that'll keep you more motivated, right? And then you can go on to the next thing. Relevant, obviously relevant to what you're, looking to do, what you're looking to pivot to or move up to, that kind of thing. And then the time bound, having some sense of time, not just putting it out there, but within the next 3 months, I will research da 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 da, right? So have informational interviews with 3 senior people in my industry this month. Great. That's a really nice, specific, measurable, achievable, right? Realistic realistic and relevant, sorry. And time, time bound within the year. So great. So I hope that helps as well. If there's any questions, start dumping them into the chat box. And I'll take as many as I can. So step 4, creating really a strategy, right? For reaching each of your goals. So whatever your goals are, like partitioning it out, right? And it's okay to focus on, like, you might have a lot of goals, but it's probably overwhelming to try to take on all of them at the same time. So maybe take one or two or a couple, that and work on those and use the SMART goals, really, get, like and break it down and get it done and then move on to another. This is a nice example here of, what I was saying earlier. If your goal is to, get Excel certification. So as step 1, what do you need to do? Before you get it, you have to research, right? You need to find, where are the training programs? What are the costs, right? Then asking your HR person, do you have professional development funds that might, help me pay for this training that would be most helpful in most beneficial in helping me meet my goals, in da 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 da. You want to make the case for it, right? Probably put something in writing and like make that case and that ask. Maybe first check with your supervisor and then offer to put something in writing. Now, a lot of times they have a form that you fill out where it has that structure, so you don't have to create it from scratch. So FYI. And then, sign up for the course, right? Take the course, do what you need to study, take the certification exam. Done, right? That's awesome. So, and also the important thing is make sure you carve out time for that goal, right? So if it's one, as much as well as I do, I'm sure, even in COVID times where things are in some ways slower, right? In other ways, they're crazier with, family life and trying to balance and all of that. But when you are trying to take on a professional goal, you need to carve out time for yourself to do that and stick to it, because it's really easy to put others first. If you have a family and such, it's like, oh, but my child needs this and that, or whatever. You need to be able to have that time so that you can carve it out. Or if it's just that you're so busy with other things, that maybe you have a really robust in normal times social life, and it's hard to carve out time from that, but you need to, right? So setting aside time or taking out an activity that's maybe not as beneficial, right? I mean, I don't know the last time I've said TV's been beneficial. So maybe, cut down if you do watch TV, cut down maybe an hour, every however often to have this instead as your, to work toward your goal. It'll serve you much better than whatever TV program you're watching, most likely. Yeah. So, questions so far on any of this? I don't see any. Danielle, are there any questions that are
No,
coming
there's
in?
none that no, there's none that I see in the chat.
Okay. And then regularly checking in with yourself. I recommend that you set calendar alarms. You put it on your calendar so that it's visible when you have those times that you're blocking out. Block them out on your calendar so they can't get filled by coworkers or whatever. Like it shows as something you have going on, right? Or, in the evening or whatever. And then, have calendar reminders so that because it's very easy to, blow through those. Oh, yeah, I was supposed to study for that or research alternatives. And, here it is, 11 o'clock at night and it's time for bed. So, the other thing, the last step on this is really, checking in, like I said, regularly with yourself and like what I do is I'll put on my calendar, like, and then I have on my cell phone, I'll have a reminder message that's like check in, goals check in, self, and that will go. And then I say, oh, I have that. And it helps me to remember and keep on that type of a thing. Right. So it might be weekly, it might be monthly, it depends on what your goal is and all of that. One of the things that you might want to do for this aspect is consider getting an accountability partner. And that's the last thing that they shared actually about this as well is, and that can be really helpful because it's somebody else external who's holding you accountable, right? And it can be really kind of a fun type of thing to do as well, right? You can do that like check in. I was doing this actually with somebody who was, also in a job search at one point, right? We would just do like a weekly, quick coffee and we would just be sharing, okay, so this is what my focus is for this week and what I'm doing. And then we would check in the next week and they could ask us about it. And having that accountability structure changes everything because you don't want to go to the meeting and say, I haven't done anything. I just, didn't take time, right? That's wasting the purpose of this accountability relationship, right? And you can and certainly there are weeks where maybe you're like, sadly my week was completely blah 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 by whatever, but here's what I'm committed to doing for next week. That's fine. But it gives you more, I think, incentive to get it done when there's somebody else that's going to be hearing that you're going to be sharing it with somebody else. Okay. So let's see. Are there any? I don't see any questions yet. Please do put your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to get as many as we can. Just briefly, I want to talk. This one was really on, that mid-career, professional development and moving on, thinking, and part of that is career change, right? Pivoting, in a career. And I do want to invite folks we are going to be doing our next boot camp. We did a boot camp last fall and it went really well. We did it as for designed, for the job search. So it was like boot camp for the job search process, right? And for job seekers. And what we found with that was that there were pockets of populations that it was hard to do together, if you will. Like the biggest divide we found was those who have no idea of what they want to do. And so they need more assistance in that. Like, how do I find out what I want to do versus I know more or less what I want to do. It's how do I get there? And so that boot camp was more the first session. There was some of both, right? But then it was more, went on to resumes and how do you do this and how do you reach that? And what do you need to keep in mind? And, all that kind of thing. So, what we're doing for this one, we're going to focus, our specialized focus is going to be it's going to be boot camp for the mid-career professional. So we're going to kind of try to focus more on the mid-career because we didn't really get to focus on that specific aspect as much, right? It was just kind of the general, which is fine. But what we're going to do is we're going to have the option. So that's going to be a 4-week course. It's going to start actually. I think it's the beginning. No, I'm sorry. It's March 17th or 18th. We're figuring out the best day time. And that's going to be the 4-week starting, right? But we're going to offer first for those folks who don't really know what they want to do. We're going to offer a 2-week pre-boot camp kind of boot camp, if you will, right? To help people a little more, and just have 2 sessions a week apart with homework in between to have people help them to find a little bit maybe more direction, at least, some options and such, right, for you to consider before you get into that traditional boot camp focusing on the mid-career professional. for the 4-week series. So for you, maybe the person that doesn't know as much, it would be a 6-week cycle. And I think we'll actually start the unknown that 17th, 18th, of March, whatever. And then the boot camp, the regular 4-week part will start at the beginning of April. So if you're interested in that, let us know. You will see information coming out on the calendar, and we'll be putting it on the Global Reentry, the next newsletter, all of that. So we'd love to have you as part of that. Okay, great. So when you are pivoting careers, right, changing careers, some of the tips that I think are most important, and these are just some of the categories, right? There's so much we could talk about on this. Exploring what you want, which we've already talked about to some degree, right? Trying to gain insight into what you want. And that might be through, some of the assessments that are out there. There's free and paid ones. There's the Myers-Briggs, there's the skills builder. There's so many. Gosh, there's, you could put some other ones that are in there that you like the best down as well. There's lots of different ones. There's the Kiersey um inventory, and you can find these free ones. There's usually free versions of the paid ones even that might give you more or less that indication. I mean, if money is an issue, and I totally get that, some of them are more expensive to take, right? But they can help in terms of what kind of careers would be best for you, maybe for you to explore. Doesn't mean all of the tips that come out are ones that you are interested in, but this is why this might be an area with your skills and experience and such, what you like, what you enjoy. But then researching the industry, right, before you make that jump. So if you are employed, they always say the best time to get a job is when you have a job. Not that it's impossible without, and there's certainly a lot of people without right now, which we understand because of the terrible, job, how it's been, the job market. But you might be instead prepping for your new career, your new pivot while you're still in your job. Now, sometimes that's not possible because it's just so maybe such an awful toxic work environment, and you might make the difficult decision to leave. Um, so that's something to consider as well. There's a question that's coming in from Stephanie. Is there a network for RPCVs to talk to each other in the field they want to switch to so they can research? I know some local RPCV groups have that as like networking. Yeah, some of the local affiliate groups do that. I know that the RPCVs of Washington, the one that's out here in DC, they do a really good they do some really good work and programs, and a mentoring program that's like really good, very good mentoring program, and they just put a lot into it. But you can also find those very easily, like I said, even on LinkedIn. If it's someone that you don't know, well, first of all, put the word out to your friends, those that you're confiding in, right? If you're looking for another job and you're still working, you may not want your employer to know that you're looking for another job, right? Because you could lose your job. Sometimes they could do that. But you might put the word out, Facebook message, whatever, to some, of your friends, just saying, hey, does anyone have tips or advice? And the way that you do it doesn't have to be, I'm looking for a new job. You might say, hey, I'm looking to connect with someone working in the blah, 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 blah field, looking to do some research related to that, area. Anyone you might know that might be willing to spend, 15, 20 minutes of their time with me. And people might have some really good ideas for you. So look at that as well. The other thing I would say though, RPCVs, Stephanie, to answer your question, there are groups like there's the workplace affinity groups that are mostly federal government, a few not. But each of those organizations are RPCVs that are making it up, right? And they do specialized offerings and such. USAID does a lot of really good open office hours, they call it, and they answer questions from people interested in working at USAID. And they feature different people from the field and domestic to talk about their experiences. And so there's some really good stuff that you can tap into through those as well. The NPCA, a calendar of events, just Peace Corps Connect .org/events has many of those on it, not always. I know there's a really good one coming up on March 4th that's it's going to be it's offered by the Women of Peace Corps Legacy, and they're featuring four female former country directors speaking about their experience and tips, and that should be really good as well. So just taking advantage of what is out there, and then yeah, going from there. Okay. And then, tapping, like I said, tapping and expanding your network, that's what it's really all about, right? Expanding it, making sometimes mid-career professionals, and I think now, of course, as we go on and the digital natives who are, I forget now how the millennials, whatever, like they're, maybe the digital natives, they've always grown up with it. They know, they're so good at, technology, whatever. They're very good at expanding their network maybe and really comfortable with it. And people who maybe are, in their 40s now, 50, not as you might have the accounts, but you might not be as like prone to just, go and research and do all of this and whatever. And so it might not come as naturally. So looking at ways to get more comfortable in that. It really is important to emphasize as a mid-career professional things like, your online presence. So your LinkedIn URL should be included on your resume generally in my mind, right? And sharing that, maybe having it in your signature so people can get a really quick, look at at you, your experience, all of that. And yes, put a picture on your LinkedIn profile, not on your resume. Don't want it on the resume unless you're going for like modeling jobs. But on LinkedIn, it's kind of regarded oftentimes as a bit sketchy if people don't have their, like, is this a real profile or somebody who's just, like made this up, whatever. So consider doing that as well. Okay, please put the rest of your questions in there. We have a few minutes left still, on questions to answer some of those questions, right? So this, the career development tips, really, this is, similar to another of the sessions that I'd done, right? In terms of, doing that career chat, asking for, 15 to 20 minutes of their time at their convenience to chat with you about their own experience. That goes over really well, right? People want to help in general, especially RPCVs, right? Return Peace Corps volunteers are awesome, and they know what it's like to come back, and they want help. So great. And then, assess your skills, right? Boost your tech skills. I've already really covered those. And in addition to those, digital natives that already have all of those are sometimes great ones to take. The tech skills, maybe you take something on, whatever program, maybe it's like social media, and maybe you're in nonprofit and you want to improve your social media presence or your skills at doing that. Even if you're not the main career comms person, right? So you can, there's so much that you can take advantage of, and like I said, take advantage of the training funds as well. So just some of the tips that we've gone over. Really, this is kind of a summary. Some of the things that I haven't mentioned yet, but really looking at internal and external opportunities for professional development. It's not just things that your company is offering or that they'll pay for. There's so much that goes on outside of that. And use Google. Make Google your best friend to say best career development professional networks, whatever, and get some of that advice too, right? But also for mid-career professionals, if you're looking at moving up or moving around, you want to make sure that you maintain this fresh collaborative spirit, right? Energetic, right? You don't want to be run over by, the newbies that are coming in that are all, gung ho, whatever. You want to show that you are a collaborator, that you're open to collaborating, you want to collaborate, accept responsibility, take on those opportunities. When they ask for, somebody who'd be willing to help, plan the annual, holiday party or the whatever, getting some of those opportunities under your belt and getting exposure to people who are also maybe from different divisions can really help you move up and your name to be known. They then, oh wow, she did a great job on that. It helps your visibility. So doing that as well. And when there is conflict, addressing it, don't just let it foster. If you're sensing that there's some resistance, by a particular person, obviously do it one on one, not in front of others. But ask, just saying, hey, I just wanted to sit down, briefly, and just, I'm sensing a little bit of, I don't know, discomfort or whatever it is, right? And I just want to, make sure that, I'm not, offending you in some way, or I want to make sure that we can chat about that, just to make sure there's nothing that I need to do to improve in this regard or whatever. Just, excuse me. Um, know when it's time to leave. That's important, right? Sometimes people get stuck in a career and they've lost the passion. They've lost the, like the drive for it, but they just don't have the gumption to like move on, or they just don't, they think that's too big of a whatever. Trust me, you don't want to be in an organization doing something that you're just for 40 plus hours a week. That's a lot, right? That ends up affecting your own personal well-being, and you don't want that as either, right? And when you do say goodbye, obviously, stay in touch and maintain contacts, because references, all of those kinds of things. You don't want to have somebody want to reference 5 years later and you haven't talked to your boss since 5 years, since you left. Shoot him or her a greeting. Maybe it's a holiday card, maybe it's a whatever, and just stay in touch with them so they're more in touch with where you are and what you're doing, which will make it much better and easier for them to serve as a reference still and remember you. Okay. Great. I know that we are almost at the top of the hour, so I want to look and see if there are other questions that have come in. I haven't seen any additional ones, so please, this is your last chance to put them into the chat box there while I go over a couple of these other slides here, right? So, the leadership and supervisory experience, that's one thing that I want to tell you. To move up in an organization, one of the areas people get stuck at is, like, you have to have supervisory experience to get, jobs, for many jobs, right? Many jobs in the government, for example, even, right? And so what happens sometimes, people who are working at Peace Corps headquarters, which is great, and I loved it, and I worked there as long as I could, and then some, right? But oftentimes, promotion, you can move up in the number and such, in your grade level quite, quite easily, and that's great, and quite a bit by the time you leave in your 5 years or eight and a half, whatever. And then, but you don't have that supervisory experience, and so all of those jobs you're looking for at that, like, 11, 13, whatever, right? They need supervisory experience. So make sure that in whatever job you're in, take advantage of any opportunities to have whether it's an official or unofficial supervisory role. Maybe it's of interns. Maybe you have an intern that reports to you, and that can be a good way for you to stretch yourself and get that exposure and experience that you can reference in your cover letter, in your interview, when needed to make that jump. Okay. Try to stay out of office politics for obvious reasons, right? You don't want to get entrenched in one or the other. You want to kind of be one of the people who can see both points and who, is committed to doing what's needed to, make it work, whatever. I already said volunteer for committees, special events, things like that. Maintain professionalism always on the job. And that means different things to different people. Some people will, they start a new job and they'll put everyone on their Facebook account that's in there. That's their, uh, you know, in their office. I'm not so much of that. I'm more of a, Facebook. I don't, accept everyone that wants or, connect, or just random, or certainly not random people that I really don't know, right? That's more of my personal, and then my LinkedIn is more of my professional, So it just, people have different preferences, right? But be open to feedback always. Try not to be defensive, as I was saying earlier. And then lastly, mastering the art of I don't know. If your boss or whoever says, what's this, da, 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 instead of just saying, I don't know, say something like, I'm not sure in that regard, but let me check on it and da, 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 and I'll get back to you. Or let them know that, just because you don't know doesn't mean that you're just going to let it sit there for them to then figure out, okay, then how do we need to figure it out? Be that kind of jump starter to help in that regard. Okay. Great. And that brings us to an end of the official presentation. I guess what I want to ask folks right now is if there are any other questions that you have for me, please feel free to ask me in the chat box.
Jody, there was a question from Morgan about the boot
Mhm.
camp. She wants to know, is there a cost, and is there an application process or a limited number of people?
Good,
And then
good
Katie
question.
said she would like to know where to sign up for boot camp.
Yep, thank you. No, that's awesome. No, there is no cost. There is never any cost with our programming, right? With the program that we do for the Return Peace Corps volunteers that we are in charge of, right? And this is a program that I run with my with Rhonda Anstead, actually, who many of you have had the privilege of working with in the past as well. She's amazing, a coach and career coach, and just has really good insight. So there is no cost. The sign up will be, there will be a limited there will be a limit, right? But what we'll be doing is we are just putting it together right now, the shell and the registration for it. So it's going to be announced the end of this month is when we have we do a global reentry newsletter, and it will go out there, but it will also be on our events calendar, watch for that. It will be there by the time that global reentry goes out, which is the last week of the month, because we have to steer people to be able to register. So they'll, be, yeah, they'll be still there. There may be a questionnaire that you fill out, like on, do you know what, because we need to get that insight of, do you know what you want to do, or are you undecided and needing, so that we can know whether or not you need to be in the pre one, and then, as opposed to just the other one. Okay. And I think I'm not sure how many we can accommodate. I think last time we accommodated up to, we said 30, and we actually ended up doing up to 40, right? But you will be fine if you sign up, in the beginning and such. And if we have too many, we'll see about how we can maybe accommodate and do, whether it's, two sessions or whatever, or repeat it. So don't worry. And you can always reach out to me as well if you need to. I'll put my Danielle, actually I can put it in here. I'll put my email in the chat box for folks, the shortened one. Jody@rpcv.org if you have questions about it, or concerns. Okay, great. And I'm glad you're excited, Jeannie. I think it'll be a great boot camp, and I'm really excited to do it and to really focus more on the mid-career professional. So, we really are working hard to get the knowledge out there, get the word out there that we are serving, your mid-career. I'm probably going to even do some sessions on senior career, types of topics for folks, as they look to, advance and all of that. So great. Guillermo, great. Glad you're interested. Awesome. We have some good energy around that boot camp. Wonderful. Any other questions that you have for me at this time? You're welcome to either dump them in the chat box, or just even, unmute yourself. I'm fine with that too, and ask the question if that's better. All right, what I think I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and end the recording, and then we can just continue. I can continue on here for a little bit as well. Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone, and make it a great day.